Yesterday we went hiking on Thimbleberry Trail with the famous Debbie Miller.
Go.
So, do you like writing books?
Oh, I love writing books. I've been writing since I was like your age. I used to write little poems and little stories, and I kept writing all through high school and college because I enjoyed it. And then when I got to be an adult, I decided I would write some books.
And how much do you know about nature?
I'm always learning because I'm always curious and I'm always asking questions from people that know more than I do. So I work with scientists a lot. Like if I'm studying salmon, like I wrote a book about salmon, and I didn't know anything really about how salmon live in the water and how they migrate and spawn. So I worked with a scientist who had been studying salmon for many, many years, and he was my teacher. And he shared with me all of his research, and then I was able to write about his work. And I learned as I went along, and I try to write words that make it easy for people like you to understand.
And what kind of books do you write?
Well, I love nature. I love all the nature that's around us right now. I love forests and mountains and oceans, and so I write nature books and true stories about how animals live and how environments, how they function and things. So I'm always outside, learning something about what we see. And that's really fun.
Do you write your books outside?
I have a journal, usually when I'm working on a project or when I'm camping on a trip in a very wild place. I always bring a journal. And then every day I spend about an hour or maybe more writing down everything that I've experienced and seen and heard, and everything that is before me. I try to describe it in my journal, and then that helps me when it comes time for me to write my book. I've got all my notes about the animals and their behaviors and the weather and the plants. So a big part of what I do is journal writing.
Can you name like a really famous book that you wrote?
Can I name a really famous book that I wrote? Oh my. Well, I can tell you some of my favorite books that I've written. They all become favorites. When you're working on a book really hard, it becomes your favorite project, right? And so my very first book was a book about caribou. And I absolutely love caribou. We have about 30 different herds of them that live all around Alaska. And some of the herds have like 200, 300,000 animals in one herd. So that you can be on the tundra up in the Arctic region of Alaska, and you might have 10,000 caribou walk right past your tent with little baby calves that are staying with their mothers. So I've been able to see all that. And that really became a favorite animal of mine and why I first started writing children's books. It was also my daughter's favorite animal, the caribou. And she wanted to read a book about caribou because there were no books written about caribou. So I thought, well, that's something I should do. She loves the animal. I love the animal. So I did a lot of research and I wrote a book about caribou for my daughter and for my own interests and curiosity in other people. Make sense? But I have other books too that I've written that have been really fun.
What are caribou?
They are our northernmost deer that we have in North America. So we have moose, and they're much bigger. They're huge. They can weigh like over 1,000 pounds. A caribou is much smaller. It might weigh 200 or 300 pounds, maybe. But they have beautiful antlers that have lots of little pointy tines on them. And they live in these big herds, and they migrate, some of the herds, very far distances in order to get to places where they can get good food in the winter, or maybe in the spring they want to find a quiet place to have their baby calves. So they're really they're like a deer that you would see in Colorado, very similar, same family, but they have their antlers would look different, and they have really thick coats of fur because they live so far north in the Arctic. So they would look a little shaggier than the deer you would have in Colorado.
And how long have you been doing
I have been writing books for close to 40 years. So a long time. I used to be.
Debbie, what is this tree?
Okay, this is a western hemlock tree, and in the temperate rainforest there are two major trees.
Jasper.
Western hemlock is one, and you can tell sometimes because it has this pattern with the bark, kind of curvy like a wave, and they grow to be very tall. And you also see them with the Sitka spruce, and we're going to be seeing a lot of those two trees in the temperate rainforest.
I'm gonna touch poop, everybody. We both are. Ew, that poop's gross. But it's not poop.
What is it?
It's a slug. It's creepy.
Can you tell me anything about that slug?
This slug is not native to the area around us. So, guys, that tree right there, it's dead, but there's lots of stuff growing from it. So it's kind of considered like part of the forest still.
It is. And do you remember what it's called? Jasper, do you remember what that?
It's a nurse tree.
A nurse log.
Yeah, a nurse tree or a nurse log, and there's so many different plants growing out of it. Hemlocks are growing out of it, and blueberry bushes, and all kinds of